Hi class, let's continue now in developing our little sample project. We created the IntelliJ project in the last video, and now we want to start working on our bank account project, right? Our bank account file, bank account class. Remember, we've already done some of the hard work here, right? We've already created the UML class diagram. So if we've done that, we could actually go copy some of that information. So rather than retyping all of this, especially if you're provided with UML or you're provided with an interface that has some of these methods, it's a lot more accurate to copy and paste these things. Now, I have a slide, so the slide's not going to work real great for that. But if you have the ability, of course, steal, right? Steal that stuff so that you have a more accurate source. Also remember that UML is not Java, so the data types here all need adjusting. We would never type capital D in Java, right? Unless we were doing a wrapper type. We'll review those later. So be careful when you're translating. This would not be capital D. This will not be capital B. Integer will not be spelled out in the cases where we're using integers. So just be careful of that. So let's now start on that and see if we can fill in some of the goodies that we have here, right? So we can keep that to the side if we need it. All right, so bank account, what do we need first? So let's review the data that we have there. We have the owner, that's a string, the account ID, that's a string, and the balance, that's a double. So let's go ahead and declare our instance variables. Remember that these will be essentially global variables, and we need global variables anytime the data comes in one method, or the constructor, which counts sort of as a method here, right? When data comes in one method, but it's accessed in another one, you need a global variable to support that. We don't like more globals than we need, but we have no choice here, right? Instance variables need to be declared. So let's take exactly what's over here. We need the owner, that's a string. So we're going to say string owner, and then we're going to say what else? We have string account ID, so we're going to make account ID, right? And then let's see what else we're going to do here. We're going to do the balance, that's a double, right? So we're going to say double balance, right? So we've now declared our instance variables, and now let's see one of the advantages that IntelliJ will have that it'll offer us right away. You'll notice if I click on this, if I set my focus to that, and I press the magic context key, which is Alt-Enter, or if you right-click and say Show Context Actions, one of the cool things here is it'll say, you know, what do you want to do with this thing, right? And we should be clear on these things, right, that these are private. So let me put these things here quickly, there we go. So now when we do this, let's see, is it bringing it right? So now when I hit the magic keystroke, it will give me some neat options, including, hey, do you want a getter and setter for these things? And if so, it will make those, because those are not very interesting code to write, right? They're very straightforward. So for the cases where you need a getter and a setter, you can do them right here, or just the getter or just the setter. So in this case, for owner, what are we going to have? We're going to have a getter and a setter, it appears in both of these. So I can just hit that magic keystroke and say, hey, create the getter and setter. So notice that was awfully easy, right? That was awfully simple. We can do the same thing, account ID. I don't think we have a setter for that, but we can certainly make the getter, and that'll add that below. And for the balance, we want a getter, I believe, is all we're going to have for that. Is that true? Right. So again, I'm going to say create a getter, right? So that was awfully easy. Now we like magic, but only if we understand the magic, right? So let's make sure that we understand what it did for us. Get methods are very straightforward, right? Gets the data, returns the contents of the global variable. In the set method, in this case, it's going to take in a new a parameter, right? And the parameter name is owner. But in this case, it did what is a very common practice, which is it named the local variable, the parameter, the same name as the global variable, which is the instance variable. So in that case, we can't just say owner equals owner, or we'll only be talking about the local variable. Remember, local variables in this and most other languages hide a global variable. So we have to be careful here because they're the same name. So when we say this.owner, it knows we are talking about the instance variable. And notice when I double click it, when I even just click on it, notice it highlights this one. it highlights this one. It doesn't highlight this one because when we use this dot owner, it knows we're talking about a field, right? So this dot owner equals owner takes this thing and assigns it to the contents that were in that thing. In this case, since it's an object, it actually points to the same string that the parameter was pointing to. Remember, these are references. So hopefully that makes good sense to you. And the rest are just very straightforward. Now, I might argue with the order of these things. You know, maybe I want to move these things down. I'm going to press the magic keystrokes that will let me move things, right? And make sure I also don't get the orders wrong on the close for the class, right? So you can move that, you can cut and paste it or something else, but I want those in that particular order. So far that's looking pretty good. Let's go see what else we need to do. We probably want a constructor, right? Bank account, name, string, all that stuff, right? So now let's make a constructor. Remember, we'll make our constructors public. Not always in all object-oriented programming, but it is rare and for very specific scenarios that you wouldn't do this. Remember that the name of the file, the name of the class, and the name of this constructor have to be the same. Right? So we're going to go ahead and fill this in, and then we say what do we want and in what order. So we'll switch back to our UML. We want the name, the ID, and the initial balance. So string for name, a string for the account ID, and a double for the balance, right? And then here again we'll do the typical thing, this dot name equals name, this dot account. Notice as it starts to bring up the suggestions, I can just tab if I want the one that it is offering, right? I guess this wasn't owner. We probably should be more consistent, right? Maybe our UML isn't great. Right? Did I make that stuff up? Yeah, yeah, I wasn't very consistent. So we should make our stuff more consistent, right? And then this dot balance. And again, when you see the selection that you like, you can either move down and up with your arrow keys or just press tab if you like that one. As you start typing, you can do that, right? So there you go. We have a start to our constructor as well. Take in the owner, the account ID, the balance. We should always immediately, when any data comes in, think about preconditions. So one of the things that we can do here is that maybe we write a little to-do note for ourselves. IntelliJ observes this, which surprised me. I literally found this by accident and I was pleasantly surprised. Think about preconditions, right? When you do that, you'll notice that down here in the bottom left, there is a to-do list. And if you bring out that expander, it actually has a to-do list for you. So you can go double click it and leave yourself notes about what you need to do. And this is how, right? / to do. I love that, and again, I was completely shocked when I found that thing was there. So that's great. Also, by the way, when you're in a pane like this, Shift Escape will take you out of the pane if you're a keystroke geek like me. All right, so we have preconditions there. I'm going to copy that because obviously any place data comes in, we want to think about that. We don't do it in get methods because no data is coming in, right? Preconditions are to help guard the door. We don't have a door, right? There's no door in a get method. It's just returning something that's already stored. All right, so let's see what else. We'll go back to our UML class diagram. What else is missing? We got the gets, we got the set. Okay, we need deposit and withdraw, and we need a toString. Okay, so let's write the deposit method. So public, let's see, it has a double, so we're going to do that. And let me make sure I don't have music starting to play because I think I hit some weird button. Okay, no music. Okay, so notice that in this case we're going to do, we might think to do public void first. Let's talk about that real briefly. And we're going to have deposit, and the amount is going to be a double. Right, that's the deposit amount, and we're going to say, okay, the balance, if they deposit money, their balance goes up by that amount. Okay, and of course preconditions, right? We've got to take care of that. We're going to copy that, paste that, and instead of deposit, this is going to be credit or deposit, yeah, and withdraw, right? Is that what we called it? Let's make sure we're very clear that we match our UML. Since we've gone to the trouble, right, we got to make sure that we are paying attention to that. Where is our UML? There we go. Deposit and withdraw, yes. Remember that these things return doubles because as a courtesy to the caller, we return the new balance, right? So we can say return balance. Okay, and we don't want to make that a void. Instead, that's going to be a double. And same thing here. We're going to return the double and return the new balance. Okay. Now, there's actually a way to shortcut this. If you pay attention and really have looked around and seen all of the good stuff that Java can do, you will see that you can actually make this a little bit more straightforward, right? You could actually see return balance, like you could actually put return here, right? And that would work, right? Because in this case, assignments actually have a result, right? Assignments have a resulting value associated with them. You can actually return that directly. So that's kind of a clever thing, but maybe you haven't seen that, so we'll leave these in place for now, okay? All right, so let's see what else. We maybe want a toString method. Remember that public string toString. Remember that toStrings are going to have this signature. Remember that Java expects this. If you're going to write a proper toString method, it needs to be an overload, right? So we could write override here to keep ourselves honest and make sure we don't put like something improper like a casing problem or put a parameter where it shouldn't. So this is an override. It's a good idea to put this here. Remember, this doesn't create an override. It keeps us honest at the fact that this is in fact overriding something that came before. In this case, it's overriding the one that's in the object class. So now remember that toStrings are not going to be an end user thing, right? You're not going to print something on somebody's bank statement that's a user facing thing. It's really more for programmers so that they can dump stuff out when they are debugging and useful things like that. So there's nothing that says exactly what you have to do here. Do the thing that's useful to you. Maybe you want all the information in there. Maybe you just want a little. So we could do something really really simple. We could concatenate a bunch of stuff. I'll paste in a sample of what we might do here. All right, and then let me bring down some of these things so they're a little bit easier to see. And then remind ourselves about string.format being such a useful thing. If you don't know about your string.formats and the basic format specifiers, then I would highly recommend that you learn those things, right? Oh, and when you withdraw money, your balance goes down, doesn't go up. Oops. We would find that in testing. Maybe we should leave that bug, right? So that we can find it later when we do our testing. Now, this is not a great efficient way to do this. Something that hopefully you touched on in 142 was the fact that we're actually creating a whole bunch of strings here, right? We're taking this and adding it to this. That makes one string, and then when you go to concatenate this, it makes another string, and then a fourth string, and then a fifth string, and then a sixth string. So we're really creating a whole bunch of strings here. We could be more efficient, but we'll talk about that another day. String builder would be one solution here to be a little more efficient. Certainly if we were doing any more concatenating than that. But really, we should do string.format for the whole thing, right? So one string.format could take care of all of this, really, right? So that would be a lot more efficient. So maybe this is another to-do that I say, icky, right? Icky, lots of strings. Use one string.format instead, right? So we'll just make a note for ourselves so that we don't get too bogged down at the moment. So that is a great start for our little bank account class. Hopefully this part all makes sense to you. And then in another video, let's pick up with our preconditions and let's maybe fix this toString. Let's just clean this thing up a little bit so that we feel extra good about the bank account class. But we'll stop this video for now. So thanks for watching.